What if I told you that the expensive, invisible fluorocarbon line you swear by is actually a bright, glowing beacon, scaring away every lethargic March crappie in the lake? It sounds crazy, I know. We've had it drilled into our heads for years. Clear water equals fluorocarbon. End of story. But today, we're going to challenge that sacred rule. I'm going to show you why what you've been told about its invisibility, especially in cold, clear spring water, might be the very reason your live well is empty. We're going to uncover a simple truth that the fish see, but most anglers completely miss. So, here's a question for you to think about. Do you believe a fish's vision gets better or worse in cold water? Drop your answer in the comments right now, and let's see if you're right. Let's set the stage. For decades, the marketing has been brilliant. Fluorocarbon line has a refractive index incredibly close to that of water. In simple terms, it's supposed to bend light almost the same way water does, making it nearly disappear. It became the undisputed king for finesse fishing, drop shotting, and any situation where you felt the fish were line shy. The guy at the tackle shop, the pro on TV, your buddy in the boat, they all say the same thing. If the water's clear, you gotta use fluoro. And for years, we just accepted it as gospel. We bought spool after spool, believing we had an invisible link to the fish. But we forgot to ask one critical question. Is less visible the same as invisible to a fish that has all the time in the world to make a decision? First, let's talk about the enemy. The March crappie isn't the same aggressive fish you'll find in May. Its metabolism is slow. The water is cold, often in the 40s or low 50s. This fish isn't chasing anything down. It's lethargic. It hangs suspended, slowly moving, and it inspects potential food with extreme prejudice. Imagine yourself in a quiet room, examining something up close. You notice every detail, every flaw. That's the March crappie looking at your jig. It has the time to see not just the bait, but everything connected to it. Now, let's add another piece to this puzzle. Water clarity. Early spring, right after the ice melts, often has the clearest water of the entire year. There's less algae, less sediment, less plankton bloom. It can be like looking into an aquarium. This is the exact condition where we're told fluorocarbon shines. But it's a double-edged sword. This gin-clear water doesn't just make it harder for the fish to see your line, it also makes it easier for sunlight to penetrate deeper and from more angles, creating a stage where any imperfection is brightly lit. Here is the core of the problem, the part we almost never discuss, the angle of the sun. The marketing about light refraction works best when light is hitting the line from directly overhead. But think about a typical spring morning. The sun is low in the sky. It's coming in at a sharp 45-degree angle, or even less. At this angle, the light doesn't just pass through the line. It catches the line's curved surface, creating a distinct glint, a flash of light. It's like the glint off a piece of glass in the sun. It's not invisible, it's a signal. Let's paint a picture. You're on the water. It's a calm, cold morning. You make a perfect cast past a brush pile where you know the crappie are staging. Your jig is falling slowly, vertically. That lethargic crappie drifts over to take a look. As it approaches, the low morning sun hits your fluorocarbon line. The line flashes. It doesn't look like part of the water. It looks like a strange, hard, glowing thread descending from the sky. To a cautious, slow-moving fish, that flash is a red flag. It's unnatural, and the bite never happens. We also need to be honest about line diameter. To avoid break-offs, many of us use 6-pound or even 8-pound test fluorocarbon for crappie, especially around cover. We tell ourselves it's still invisible, but the thicker the line, the more surface area it has to catch light. A thicker line creates a more noticeable flash and casts a more defined shadow in that clear water. You may have gained strength, but you've sacrificed a huge amount of stealth, completely defeating the purpose of using fluorocarbon in the first place. And then there's the line's character itself. Fluorocarbon is known for being relatively stiff. It has memory. This means it rarely hangs perfectly straight in the water, especially with a lightweight crappie jig. It often has a slight coil or bend to it. Each one of those little bends and curves acts like a tiny lens, catching the light from different angles and creating multiple points of reflection. It's not a single invisible thread. It's a series of little flashes telling the fish that something is wrong. This leads to a simple on-the-water experiment I did that changed my perspective forever. I set up 2 identical rods with the same small jig. One had 6-pound fluorocarbon. The other had old-school 4-pound clear monofilament. On a bright, clear March day, I consistently got more bites, and better quality bites, on the monofilament. Why? Because the much thinner, more supple mono hung straighter and presented a significantly smaller profile to catch that sunlight. The fish just weren't as suspicious of it. If you could put on a mask and fins and look at these lines underwater, the truth becomes obvious. From the fish's perspective, looking up towards the bright surface, the fluorocarbon line often appears as a sharp, dark silhouette. It stands out against the bright sky. It doesn't magically blend in. In fact, its density can sometimes make it stand out more than a neutral buoyancy monofilament line, which seems to blend into the water column more effectively in certain light conditions. Think about contrast. If the bottom is dark mud or covered in decaying leaves, a line silhouetted against the bright surface is incredibly easy to spot. A lethargic crappie that's holding near the bottom has a perfect view of this unnatural line cutting through its world. It's like drawing a black line on a white piece of paper. The marketing tells us to focus on what happens inside the line, but the fish is often seeing the shadow or the outline of the line, and that's just as spooky. This brings me to the line's shadow. Yes, your fishing line casts a shadow. In that ultra-clear spring water with a low sun, a 6 or 8-pound fluorocarbon line casts a surprisingly distinct, thin shadow on the bottom or on suspended particles in the water. A fish doesn't even have to see the line itself. It can see the shadow moving unnaturally as you work your bait. It's another subtle clue that tells a wary fish to stay away. It's a detail most anglers never even consider. So what's the alternative? Let's talk about thin diameter monofilament. For years it's been seen as inferior, but modern monofilament is incredibly thin and limp. A 4-pound test mono can have the same diameter as a 2-pound test fluoro. That massive reduction in size makes it far less visible and less likely to flash, even if its refractive index isn't as perfect. For a slow vertical presentation, the suppleness of mono also allows the jig to have a more natural action, which can be the real trigger. Here's an even more radical idea, especially for the vertical jiggers. High visibility braid with a very short leader, or sometimes no leader at all. I know it sounds like heresy, but think about it. The fish is focused on the bait. A short 6-inch leader of 4-pound fluorocarbon or mono might be all you need to separate the bait from the main line. The fish is less likely to see the main line when it's focused on the jig right in front of its face. The sensitivity you gain from braid is off the charts, allowing you to feel the lightest possible bites. We often focus only on what the fish sees, but we forget what it feels. The stiffness of fluorocarbon can impede the natural action of a tiny 1/32 ounce jig. The jig doesn't flutter or fall as naturally. A lethargic crappie might be triggered more by a bait's subtle, natural movement than by anything else. By using a stiff line, we might be killing the very action that we need to get a bite, regardless of how invisible we think the line is. There's a powerful psychological trap at play here. We spend a lot of money on premium fluorocarbon. Therefore, we want to believe it's the best tool for the job. It's called confirmation bias. We ignore the evidence that it might not be working because we're invested in the idea. The empty live well is because the fish just aren't biting, not because our $20 spool of line is the problem. It's tough to admit our expensive gear might be wrong. You can even run a simple test yourself at home. Take a clear glass baking dish or a deep bucket of water. Stretch a piece of your favorite fluorocarbon across the top and shine a flashlight on it from a low angle, mimicking a morning sun. Watch what happens. You'll see the line light up. You'll see it glint and flash. Now do the same with a piece of thin, clear monofilament. The difference in how much light it reflects can be absolutely shocking. It's a simple test that proves the point. I remember a story about an old-timer I used to see on my local lake. We were all out there with our fancy graphite rods and fluorocarbon leaders, struggling to get a bite. He was in an old aluminum boat with a fiberglass rod, using nothing but cheap eagle claw hooks and 4-pound Stren monofilament. And he was absolutely putting on a clinic. He wasn't doing anything special. He was just presenting a simple minnow on a line the fish weren't afraid of. That image has stuck with me for years. It's truly a perfect storm of negative factors. You have a fish that is slow, cautious, and has plenty of time to inspect things. You have water that is exceptionally clear, allowing for deep light penetration. And you have low sun angles that turn your line's round surface into a mirror. These three things combined make early spring crappie fishing one of the worst possible scenarios for relying on the invisibility of standard fluorocarbon line. This doesn't mean fluorocarbon is useless. Of course not. It's an incredible tool. For summertime bass fishing in 80-degree water, when fish are aggressive and reacting instantly, its low visibility and abrasion resistance are fantastic. When you're casting and retrieving, the line is moving and the fish doesn't have time to study it. But for a slow vertical finesse presentation to a neutral fish, it can be a serious liability. The ultimate lesson here is that there are no magic bullets in fishing. No single product works perfectly in every situation. We have to be willing to think critically and challenge the conventional wisdom. We have to observe what is actually happening on the water, not just what the marketing tells us should be happening. Sometimes, the old-school way is better for a reason. Don't be afraid to experiment. Your results might just surprise you. So the final verdict is this. For lethargic March crappie in clear water, it's time to seriously reconsider if your fluorocarbon line is your friend. Downsizing your line diameter is the most important thing you can do. Consider using a high-quality, ultra-thin monofilament or even experimenting with a braid-to-short leader setup. Pay attention to the light conditions. On cloudy, overcast days, fluorocarbon is a much safer bet. But on those bright, sunny spring days, it might be the very thing holding you back. So let's wrap this up. The big takeaway is that your fluorocarbon line is not a magic invisibility cloak, especially not to a slow-moving, suspicious crappie in cold, clear March water. The real game changer, the aha moment, is realizing that the marketing focuses on the line's refractive index, but the fish is reacting to the flash from the sun's angle and the line's silhouette. We've been focusing on the wrong variable this whole time. This one shift in thinking could force you to rethink your entire finesse setup for the early season, and it could be the key to unlocking those tough spring bites. Thank you so much for watching. If this video blew your mind a little bit, or made you question what's on your spool, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more myth-busting fishing content. Now, I have a question for you all. What's the one fishing rule you've broken that ended up catching you more fish? I really want to hear your stories in the comments below.